The glass shattered in slow motion, sending jagged shards spinning across the room like diamonds caught in a storm. Vincent Larcos barely flinched as the chaos erupted around him. The club's atmosphere, filled with laughter, pulsating lights, and expensive perfume, shifted into something darker, more dangerous. He stood at the center of the storm, his sharp eyes fixed on the figure who had dared to disrupt his night. The woman at the bar didn't blink when the glass hit the floor. She didn't flinch when a scream followed, and the people around her scattered. In fact, Maya Robles didn't even acknowledge the commotion. She was too focused on the man standing across the room from her. Vincent's gaze was cold and calculating as always, but there was something different in the way he watched her, something unfamiliar that flickered behind his usual icy composure. Maya's eyes, sharp and unblinking, locked with his, unafraid, unwavering. She wasn't the typical woman who'd fall at his feet at the first glance. No, she stood her ground even as the tension in the club heightened. He had built an empire on fear, on control, on making people tremble with just a word. But this woman? She wasn't afraid of him. That was what bothered him the most. He couldn't remember the last time a woman stood her ground in front of him without flinching. "You," he said, his voice slicing through the noise, a dangerous calm behind it. Maya slowly set down her drink, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "Me?" she asked, her tone not defensive but curious. "Is there a problem?" A few of his men moved in, sensing something off in the air. But Vincent waved them off with a subtle gesture, never breaking eye contact. This was personal. For the first time in years, he found himself intrigued. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his words laced with a soft threat, the kind of question that typically made others cower. He wasn't expecting her to answer, not really. It was just a way to remind her of her place, of the power he commanded. Her lips twitched into the faintest of smiles, a smile that said she saw right through him. "Should I?" Her voice was cool, measured, but there was a sharpness in it that made Vincent's pulse quicken, just a little. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it. So nonchalant, so casual, as if she were asking if the sky was blue or if the drink was cold. It rattled him more than he cared to admit. "You will," he replied, stepping closer, his body moving with the fluidity of a predator on the hunt. The space between them shrank with every breath, the room feeling smaller as the strobe lights danced around them. The crowd around them seemed to blur, becoming nothing more than a backdrop to the two of them, locked in this strange, magnetic standoff. Maya didn't move. She stood there, her posture relaxed, but her eyes never leaving his. "Not a hint of fear?" Vincent noted. That was rare. He couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at him like that, especially a woman. He smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "What's your name?" "Maya," she said, as though the answer were inconsequential, and in that moment, it felt like it was. The name, the way she said it, like it didn't matter to her who he was, who he thought he was. A strange heat began to rise in his chest, something unfamiliar. He had made countless women fall for him, had bent the most powerful figures in the city to his will. But Maya wasn't like them. She didn't look at him like a king. She looked at him like she could care less. "Let me buy you a drink," he offered, trying to maintain the upper hand, but there was a crack in his confidence now, something slipping. He didn't like it. She shook her head, her gaze never wavering. "I'm fine, thanks," she replied. "I'm not interested in your money, your power, or your games." Vincent's jaw tightened. The nerve. "You're different," he said, the words escaping before he could stop them. He didn't know what it was, her voice, her eyes, the way she carried herself, but it was like nothing he had ever encountered. And it infuriated him. "Don't flatter yourself," Maya said, her voice light, almost amused. "You're just another man in a long line of men who think they can control me, but I'm not interested." The audacity. Vincent took a step back, his mind racing. He had never met someone who refused to fall for his charm, his wealth, his power. Women were supposed to want him. They were supposed to fight for his attention, for a glimpse of the empire he ruled over. But Maya? She didn't even care. A challenge. That's what this was. And Vincent Larcos never lost. "You'll change your mind," he said, his tone more ominous now. The words were almost a promise, but there was something in them, an underlying threat that he didn't mean to show. But in that moment, the hunger to conquer her became unbearable. Maya raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into the faintest of smirks. "No, I don't think I will." He stood there, watching her for what felt like an eternity, but in truth, it was only seconds. Seconds that felt like they might drag him into something he couldn't control. It was an unsettling feeling. Vincent wasn't used to being the one who couldn't control the situation. But for some reason, Maya Robles had managed to strip him of that control with just a few words, and that was something Vincent Larcos wasn't willing to let go of. He turned to walk away, but then he stopped, his back still to her. "I'll be seeing you again, Maya." And as he left, he couldn't help but feel that for the first time, the hunter had become the prey. The next few days felt like a blur to Vincent. The city hummed around him, but his thoughts were consumed by Maya. He couldn't shake the image of her, standing there, untouched by his power, unbothered by his threats. It was infuriating. Women fell at his feet for less than a glance, but Maya, she didn't even look at him the way others did. She looked at him like he was just another man, one that didn't matter. And that, more than anything, made Vincent want her. The Mafia king was used to being in control of his men, of his business, of his life. He had orchestrated everything with precision. But Maya? She made him feel like an amateur. He didn't know what it was about her that had him so rattled. He couldn't even remember the last time a woman had looked at him without desire in her eyes. No, Maya looked at him like a challenge. And Vincent never backed down from a challenge. The day after their encounter, Vincent had his men deliver flowers to her shop, a bouquet of crimson roses, the finest in the city. The gesture was nothing more than a test. She had turned him down once, and now he wanted to see if she would refuse something as simple as a gift. A few hours later, his assistant came back, her face tight with disappointment. The flowers were returned. No note. Just a simple rejection. Vincent's lip curled into a half smile, but it was edged with frustration. "She doesn't know what she's messing with," he muttered, but the words didn't have the same conviction as before. His stomach churned with something unfamiliar, something between rage and intrigue. He had to make her understand. He called his men again. "Set up a dinner at the best restaurant in Betrayal, Victoria. Make sure she knows it's not just a casual invite. She's to be escorted there directly." That night, he waited. He knew she wouldn't show up, but he had to try. It was a game now, and Vincent never lost games. He sat alone at the table, his back straight, the weight of his power almost tangible in the room. The fine china gleamed under the soft light, the wine glasses sparkling as if in anticipation. The soft hum of the piano in the background did little to soothe the tension building in Vincent's chest. Hours passed. No Maya. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. As expected. But still, he couldn't rid himself of the strange sensation lingering in his chest. It wasn't anger, not exactly. But there was something unsettling about the way she made him feel. When the waiter finally arrived, Vincent's patience was wearing thin. "She didn't come," he said, his voice a little too sharp. The waiter hesitated before replying, his voice quieter than usual. "No, sir, she didn't, but she did leave a message for you." Vincent's brow furrowed, his curiosity piqued. The waiter handed him a small folded note. With a swift motion, Vincent opened it, his eyes scanning the few short words written inside. "I don't need your dinner, and I'm certainly not interested in playing your games." The note was a slap in the face. Vincent's fingers tightened around the paper, the words burning in his mind. But as much as he wanted to tear the note to shreds, something else simmered inside him, something more dangerous than anger. It was the realization that she was winning. And Vincent Larcos never let anyone win. The next day, Vincent found himself standing outside her shop, leaning against his car, watching the sunlight gleam off her windows. Maya was inside, working, sewing, creating things with her hands, things that weren't about power or wealth. There was something so raw and genuine about it, something Vincent couldn't quite understand. He should have left, he knew that. But instead, he found himself watching her through the glass, captivated by the calm, steady rhythm of her movements. She hummed as she worked, her hands moving with purpose, with grace. And yet, every time he watched her, it felt like she was completely unaware of his presence. Vincent couldn't remember the last time a woman had made him feel invisible. Minutes turned to hours as he stood there, unable to tear his gaze away from the woman who had turned his world upside down. He was the king of Vitoria, feared by everyone. And yet, here he was, powerless against a woman who didn't want his power, who didn't care about his riches. He had to have her. He had to make her care. The next evening, Vincent tried something different. He sent a simple text to her. No flowers, no dinner, no grand gestures. Just a few words. I need to see you, tonight. He hit send before he could change his mind. Hours later, Maya's response came through, and for a brief moment, Vincent held his breath. It was a single word. Why? That was all. No promise, no rejection, just a question. Vincent knew that bow was the opening he had been waiting for. A crack in the wall she had built around herself. He texted back, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Because I can't stop thinking about you. He didn't know if it would work, but there was something inside him now, a drive to win her over that burned hotter than any ambition he'd ever had. Something about her had gotten under his skin, and he wasn't ready to let go. He waited. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. Her reply was simple, but it was everything he needed. Fine. 10 p.m. As the hours passed, Vincent's thoughts raced. He wasn't sure what to expect, but one thing was certain. Tonight would be different. He could feel it in his bones. By the time 10 p.m. came, he was waiting outside her shop, his heart pounding in his chest. Maya stepped outside, her eyes meeting his with that same calm intensity. She didn't smile, didn't offer any sign of warmth, but she was here. Get in, he said softly, opening the door of his car for her. She didn't hesitate. She got in. And for the first time in a long while, Vincent Larcos felt like the prey. The drive through the city felt like an eternity. Vincent's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, his gaze fixed ahead. But his mind was 1,000 miles away. The silence between him and Maya was thick, heavy. And yet, it wasn't uncomfortable. Maya sat next to him, her posture straight, her eyes steady, unflinching. She wasn't intimidated by him, not even a little. It was clear now, after all these encounters, that she wasn't like other women. Vincent could feel the weight of her indifference pressing down on him, making him question everything. The power he wielded near the empire he had built, the women who fell at his feet. All of it seemed so meaningless in the face of Maya's calm detachment. He couldn't quite wrap his mind around it. They reached a quiet, upscale rooftop restaurant, a place that few knew about, tucked away from the noise of the city. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the table set for two. The view of Vitoria's skyline was breathtaking, but for Vincent, the beauty of the scene was nothing compared to the woman sitting across from him. He didn't say anything as the waiter led them to their table. He didn't need to. There was a different kind of tension building between them, one that had nothing to do with words. Maya sat down first, her eyes sweeping across the city as she adjusted in her chair. Her calmness irritated Vincent, yet it fascinated him at the same time. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. He was used to being the one in control. Women were supposed to hang on his every word. But with Maya, it was as if she didn't even care about him, and that made him want her more. He sat across from her, the table between them feeling like a chasm, and for the first time, he felt like he didn't know how to bridge it. His usual arrogance didn't seem to work. For once, his power, his wealth, none of it mattered to the woman sitting before him. "So, why am I here?" Maya's voice broke the silence. It was blunt, no pretense, just a simple question. But the way she asked it made Vincent pause as if she were truly puzzled by the situation. "You're here because I wanted to see you," he replied, his voice low. He wasn't sure if he was being honest with her or himself. Maya raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a faint, skeptical smile. "You could have sent me flowers again, or maybe tried a different restaurant," she said, leaning back in her chair. "So why come all the way here?" Vincent was taken aback by her calmness. The words seemed to cut through him, but in a way that felt strangely freeing. He could feel the walls he had built up inside him begin to crack. "I don't usually chase women," he said, his voice thick with something he didn't want to acknowledge. "But you're different." Her gaze softened, but there was no warmth in her eyes, only a quiet curiosity. "What makes me different?" He swallowed, not knowing how to answer, how to articulate the pull he felt toward her. "You don't care about me," he said finally. "You don't care about my power, my money, my empire." He paused, his fingers tightening around his glass. "Most people would do anything to be in your position. They'd crawl at my feet. You just..." He trailed off, searching for the right words, but the truth was simpler than he wanted to admit. "You don't want anything from me." Maya stared at him for a long moment. Her lips parted slightly, and for a second, Vincent thought she might say something that would break him. But then, she simply nodded, almost as if she had already expected this. "You're right," she said quietly. "I don't want anything from you." Her eyes met his again, and there was something in them, something that made Vincent's heart skip. "I don't need your power or your money. I've built my own life, Vincent, and I'm not looking for someone to save me." Her words stung more than he cared to admit. It wasn't that he wanted to save her. It was the fact that she didn't need him at all. And that realization, more than anything, shook him to his core. "I never asked to be saved," he said, his voice tight, almost defensive. "But that doesn't mean I don't want to know you." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "I don't need your help, Vincent," she said again. "And I'm not interested in a man who thinks he can just walk into my life because he has power. That's not love. That's ownership." Her words pierced through him, and for a brief, fleeting moment, Vincent understood. She wasn't like the others. She wasn't here to be controlled, to be manipulated into something he could dominate. She wasn't interested in being part of his world, a world built on violence, fear, and control. She wanted peace, and that was something Vincent couldn't give her. For the first time in his life, he was face to face with his own limitations, and it shook him to his core. He could command armies, rule a city, but when it came to Maya, he felt like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into a void that he couldn't reach. He let out a breath, his gaze dropping to his glass. "Then why are you here?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She met his gaze again, and for the first time, Vincent saw something softer in her eyes. Compassion, maybe, or pity. It wasn't what he expected, but it felt like a kind of truth. "I'm here because you asked me to be," she said simply. "But I'm not staying for the reasons you think." He looked at her, his chest tight. This wasn't a game anymore. The way she looked at him now was different. There was no fear, no desire to win him over. She wasn't here for him. She wasn't here to be his prize. She was here because she had a choice. And in that moment, he realized he was the one who didn't have a choice anymore. The rest of the evening passed in silence, but it wasn't the kind of silence that brought comfort. It was a silence that felt heavy, laden with unspoken truths. Vincent couldn't shake the weight of Maya's words, each one echoing in his mind like a drumbeat that wouldn't stop. She didn't need him. She didn't want him. She was the one person who had looked at him as just a man, not a king. As they left the rooftop restaurant, the cool night air hit Vincent like a slap. The city stretched before them, a glittering labyrinth of lights and shadows. But none of it seemed to matter anymore. Maya didn't say a word as they walked to the car. She didn't look at him, didn't acknowledge the tension that had gripped them both since the moment she'd stepped into his world. She just moved with that calm, unflappable grace that seemed to unsettle Vincent more than any gun or threat ever had. When they reached the car, he turned to her, finally breaking the silence that had been gnawing at him all evening. "Why are you still here, Maya?" His voice was low, edged with a mixture of frustration and something deeper, something he wasn't ready to acknowledge yet. "You don't want me. You don't need me. You're just playing this game with me, so why are you still here?" Maya's eyes met his, and for the first time that night, he saw something flicker behind the coolness. An emotion that wasn't quite pity, but almost regret. It was gone in an instant, replaced by the same calm, impenetrable gaze that had unsettled him from the beginning. "I'm here because I didn't want to leave you to your own devices, Vincent," she said quietly, her voice soft but firm. "You've built this life, this empire on the backs of others. And now you think you can just walk away from it all? As if it means nothing?" Her words cut deeper than he expected. He had never seen his world through someone else's eyes, never truly questioned the darkness that came with it. But now, Maya's words seemed to hold a mirror up to his soul, forcing him to confront the life he had lived, the choices he had made. "I don't need you to save me, Maya," he said, his voice almost a whisper, as though the words themselves were foreign to him. "But I don't know how to let go of everything I've built." "I know," she said simply. "I know. But it's not about letting go of your empire. It's about letting go of the fear, the control, the walls you've built around yourself. You've never had to let anyone in. But maybe it's time."